individual person having a human experience for much of my life. And it really, there's a synchronicity to life and to getting a chance to meet you at this time. I'm very grateful for that.
I feel the same, thank you.
You, this is Dakota She'haman. How'd I do?
Very good.
Nice, huh? Nice. How did you choose that to be your name?
Well, I've got several answers to that. I was Dakota for a while. It's not my birth name, and then I was my birth name for a while, and someone came to me and said, I just can't picture you with this name. It doesn't seem like the right name for you. And I said, no, that's because it's not. And so I gave them Dakota, and they said, yes, that's it. So
nice.
That's one of the answers. My last name has many stories behind it. I've had many names in my lifetime.
Different incarnations.
That's right. And one of my children, when he was about 5, he said to me, I wonder what my name is going to be when I grow up. And I just loved that. That was beautiful to me, that they understood that we become different people, we evolve, and having a name that changes with that seems appropriate, and it was normal for them.
And I think, and that's the thing that excites me about understanding what normal is, because what I grew up thinking that I was the one broken.
I think a lot of people do.
Exactly.
Yes.
That was it. Everybody else has it figured out. They got the book, the secret. But I didn't, and I didn't realize this, and so it really kicked off a lot of self-loathing, a lot of that undercore that you have to heal through, and all that. And you've done that. You've come through a lot of healing and growing in your life.
Yes, I think so.
And meditation, and one of the things that I wanted to talk about is this concept, because here in now we're having this conversation at the end of 2018 as far as the Gregorian calendar. Anyhow, so we're here at the end of 2018, and so what is this time? And what does it mean for us? You have a family, and they live in
northern Wisconsin.
In northern Wisconsin,
Right now.
And what is happening there? Because I'm interested in that, and I want to groove into how meditation has led you into that, and tell me a little, give us some pictures of what life is like there.
Well, we first came to northern Wisconsin as part of a wilderness immersion program.
And what was that? What is that?
That was through Teaching Drum Outdoor School in northern Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a program called the Wilderness Guide Program, which is a 1-year or 11-month wilderness immersion program. And typically it's done with adults, mm-hmm. and has been for many years. And
it's self. I mean, the words. It's you immerse yourself in the wilderness.
Yes, there's a school base, and they have a camp that's about 8 miles away that is surrounded by wilderness, mm-hmm. and on a lake, and they own some property there, and the students are called seekers, and we go out, we walk out to the camp with whatever gear we're permitted, and it's very simple, very, very little other than the basics, and some years it's less than the basics, significantly less than the basics. Our year was the first and only program of its kind, as far as I know, ever to exist in the world anywhere in time, and that was the family year-long program where they specifically we're looking for families with kids, and the kids in our group, our clan, ranged from, I believe it was 2 to 14, and I think we had 3 2-year-olds, or maybe, and a 3-year-old, something like that. We started out with 42 people, and 17 of those were children. And we learned to work together. We had magnificent guidance from the school about everything from parenting to how to bathe in the winter time, to lost proofing, to cooking without pots, things like that, starting fires. They have a guardian program that some of the people could choose to be in, that learned more of the wilderness skills and guiding that many people think of when they think of it wasn't really a wilderness skills program so much as it was learning to relate to nature in a different way, and relate to each other with what nature gives us. And so anyway, you asked me about being in northern Wisconsin. That's what brought us there. We don't live in that program now. I mean, we have a house, and most of my children's lives we lived off grid. We lived in some houses that we built. We lived in a yurt for a year with 12 goats underneath. Helped keep us warm. That was in Northern California. My kids have had a very eclectic life, and a pretty simple one. I homeschooled them up until a couple of years ago, and that included all sorts of adventures, primitive skills gatherings, and goat walking in the wilderness for weeks at a time in the summer times with goats with packs, and traveling to a lot of different places and seeing a lot of different things. And
well, what did it teach you? How did they relate? How, when you look at the kids and your own consciousness in this 21st century smartphone, globally interconnected world, and you see that, and then you see this experience, how do these two things live together, and live together in your consciousness and your observations? What kinds of awarenesses are coming up from your experience, Dakota?
Well, how they integrate within me and how they integrate within my family is very different. So my kids are all teenagers now, and of course
the easy years.
They right. Well, and maybe harder for me in some ways, because I'm having to do a real personality adjustment to allow them to be the people they want to be. And up until now, they could be the people that I wanted them to be, and more or less. But
That's right.
they're not willing to milk goats anymore, and that's okay. And they have other things that they're exploring, and I'm trying to support them with that. And for years I had no phone at all, and that infuriated everybody who knew me and wanted to be in touch. I did email occasionally from the library, and I would be told things like, "Well, you can't live in the world today without a cell phone."
Yeah.
And well, I didn't even have a house phone until a few years back, and I just a couple months ago bit the bullet and got a cell phone, and yeah, and a couple of days ago I had just flown into Austin, and two of my sons were at a wrestling meet that evening, and being able to text them and find out about their wrestling meet and send them a couple photos from where I was in Austin was beautiful. I loved it, and I was able to be in two places at one time, and so it definitely has a value. And at the same time, it's really important to me never to imagine that I need that, because I know for sure I don't. And I think temporarily, while my kids are going through this age, I'm sort of going through a little growth stage in learning to balance with it, but I'm never going to be a social media junkie, that's for sure.
Yes. Well, I because I have have found myself that I can get hooked into fairly easily. I can get hooked into something, and before I even realize that I'm hooked. So that's part of the awareness and my wanting to continue to be more mindful. In the work I do communication coaching, and I'm seeing that there is a broad across businesses, there is a movement toward mindfulness. And so I look at it like if we have a gradient as opposed to an on-off switch, so that if I can just move one tiny incremental toward the one, from like 0 to 1, so that if I can move in incrementally up there, I can be more mindful. And that's a much more resonant concept with me. You pulled into mindfulness and meditation. How did you do that?
Well,
terrible question, by the way. I understand that's
well,
so broad, but
it is a
I
very
need
broad
you to.
question.
I just want you to know I know the absurdity of the question I just asked. Help me to ask a better question. Help me a route into that will make some kind of.
How I got into mindfulness and how I got into meditation aren't necessarily the same thing. I do practice Vipassana meditation, which is taught through several organizations. The one that I am involved with is the teacher is the late S.N. Goenka, and it's all on audio and videotape, and it's the same every course. And they do initially for new students, they do 10-day courses. And there are several centers in the United States and many camps, and they have courses going year-round. And it's a phenomenal organization. It's in this country, it's entirely volunteer-based and donation-based, and I can't say enough good things about it. But that's not.
And so, how does someone get to get connected with that?
There's a website. I believe it's dhamma.org.
Good. Well, we'll put that on the screen. All right. So go ahead now. Continue.
My first experience with Vipassana was a teacher when I was a teenager and in my early 20s.
Mm-hmm.
I had a very difficult adolescence and would be overwhelmed with what I now see as just reactivity to emotional states, hormonal states, whatever, reactivity to different things that would come up, and I didn't know what to do with it. And of course, that's the defining quality of adolescence, is trying to figure out what to do with that energy.
Yeah.
And I flailed. I was very difficult, I'm sure, for the people around me, and certainly very difficult for myself. And
in your story that I read, the part that you allowed me to read, because there was a lot of adventuring of being willing to say, okay, well, I'm going to go out and take a flyer on this and see what I can do on that. Is that passion to explore? Is that an essentialness? It's so essential to the story that I was reading.
Sure. It's a passion to explore nature and self, and that's all kind of the same thing.
Absolutely.
And this teacher that I was talking about is Stephen Levine, and we've talked a little bit about him. And he didn't actually teach Vipassana meditation. He was teaching conscious living and conscious dying, and he referred to his practice and a little bit to the technique, just as experiencing physical sensations. And so I had no formal training, and it wasn't anything like the courses that I later went to. I would just, when I started feeling that feeling of overwhelm, of I wasn't in control anymore, I would just sit down on the bed and feel my physical sensations. And it was mind-blowing for me how that transformed the situation. It put me back in control. And I did that for probably a decade before I actually sat a regular course. And
what an amazing experience. Just as you're speaking of that, I can think of maybe 40 times in the last week or more when I have reacted rather than sat and experienced the emotions that are happening at that moment.
Sure. I probably can too.
But that's all. I mean, I love Dennis Tardan, work in progress.
Right.
I have not grown. I'm merely growing. I mean, as certainly.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's part of where I'm going. So how have your kids returned from that experience and been able to experience the hustle and bustle and the modern and return from that immersion? Was there something like when you come up out of the deep, you have to have some type of like you get the bends if you don't?
You're talking about the wilderness immersion.
Yeah.
Well, they did guide us very well in the last moon of the program. That we had a lot of workshops on reemerging, if you will, into the culture. It's definitely a culture shock.
Mm-hmm.
I think much more so for the adults. The kids were so much more pliable, so much more able to adapt to. I think that if I had
great word, pliable.
Yes. I think if I had waited another year, they would not have been able to do the program. I believe they were 7 to 11 years old when we first did it, and they were open to it. They didn't really know what was going to happen. I didn't really know what was going to happen, but I knew enough to be afraid. I'm afraid of mosquitoes, or I'm going to be too cold, or I have to live in a little hut with people I don't know, and whatever
Sure.
the fear is. They didn't have that fear. They just went into it and experienced it and made it their own. And it was the same way coming back, more or less. In many ways, we had gone into the experience having lived a more simple life than a lot of the people there.
Mm-hmm.
And so in some ways, they were actually moving more into an American lifestyle, moving into the woods. I mean, some ways not, but most ways not. But a few things, like once a month, we were allowed to go into the center and use the phones and the computers to do business. And they had that set up for programs of adults. They hadn't really structured it around children. And so, of course, the kids wanted to go in and use it for video games or something that my kids had no experience with. So they actually learned to appreciate video games while we were in a wilderness immersion program, which was a little backwards.
What I learned from my...
But, it was once a month. And the other part of that is that Teaching Drum was very interested in us adopting a more native, if you will, way of both parenting and relating to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Relationship being really the initial primitive skill, which most people don't even think about.
I love that
So-
you say that, because one of the things what I'm so clear on is that we as humans are we're tribal. That's where I think that this sense of community that we need. We need that sense of community, that sense of accountability, that sense of together. We're all in this together. That's important. That I'm not sure that these single family separate dwellings that we have gotten ourselves into in our the affluenza that has happened here. I'm not sure that's how we're wired.
Yes. And I would agree with that. That's been a lot on my mind lately, talking about the difference between living a more simple lifestyle as opposed to using technology to take care of the ails of our culture. And I was talking this morning actually about how when I was a teenager, when I became a legal adult, it was suddenly overwhelming to me that I was responsible to take care of myself. I'm suddenly medically, financially, job, whatever. It's you know, I'm on my own, and I realized very quickly that rather than try to dance harder to do what our culture says everyone should want, to create that I wanted to learn to live within the simplicity that I could manage comfortably and happily, and that went right along with the meditation and my interest in being close to nature. And
that fascinates me, because what that says to me is that you're not going to let it be the owner of you. You're putting it in the order that technology serves you. You're not going to serve
yes,
technology. So it's an order of operations rather than that, because it's so quickly that I'll find that I find in the evenings, like at the end of a workday, that no matter how many emails I answer, I can always think of 2 or 3 more. It's never enough. And that's a concept that I would like to explore. Could we talk about what the word? Do you think about what does the word enough mean? I ask this of someone because I work with some very highly successful monetarily and career-wise people, and I ask them, do you have a concept of what enough would be? When would you? Pardon?
and do they?
No, that's but that's something that I've been trying to explore, so that I would know when I got there. How would I know? How would I know when I have enough money? And so my wife Melissa and I have discussed this, and we've come up with a figure that anything that we know that if we had this much in our savings accounts and our business and checking accounts and this much in a CD, anything over that, with our basic expenses paid, everything over that would spill over, we're going to just give away. So we know we actually have a figure. We actually have a number. So we'll know when we get there. That's enough for us. And it wouldn't matter to me. And when I ask, I try to make this without judgment. That not everyone's going to have the same number. Some person might say 5 billion. Okay, but at least you'll know it.
Right.
Warren Buffett knows it. Warren knows when he's gotten there. Bill Gates knew it. He knows when he's gotten there. Why can't the rest of us?
Well, the answer to your question about enough is, for me, is it's what we're content with. It's what we're happy with. And from a once you get into meditating, it becomes really clear that human nature is there's never enough, and it's a bottomless hole, you know.
Yeah.
There's part of the teaching, the meditation teaching that I do is about how when we get one thing, that prompts us to be discontent with it,
Yes.
and to need something more, something
Yes.
bigger, and the whole process of meditation is learning to meet what you're given and accept it and appreciate it for what it is. The other answer I have to that question is, a couple of years ago, I had a dream message, and we were taught during the wilderness program to work with our dreams in a different way, and it became very much a part of life. Not just this is a dream and this is real life, but the whole thing is real life, and I have taken that much further in that I work with real awaking life as I do with my dreams to receive the messages that are coming similarly to both venues. And so I received a dream message that was, I had been questioning about the difference between want and need. And the message was, if it happens, then it's a need. And that need can only be ascertained in the present. And with that, there's this incredible trust that whatever I'm getting, that is what I need. And there's a contentment that comes with that. And I can be happy with anything. I've been through some really extreme turmoil and ups and downs and here and there in my life, and if I can find the gift in it, and there is a gift in every little speck of it, because it's completely designed for me, it's perfect for me, and as long as I know that and I hold that, I will find the gift, and I'm content.